Hello, everyone. Welcome to another exciting episode of your favorite aquarium podcast on the planet and everywhere else. Like Jason says, Jason, kind of a quick last minute topic idea that I don't really know where we're going to go with, but I think it's something that a lot of people talk about. What is it that we're talking about today?
So I'm so excited to cover this topic because I think we're going to get a lot of feedback, especially from fish store owners. And that is, should fish stores basically determine whether or not someone's allowed to keep a certain fish, right? Should they make sure they have the right tank and maybe not sell fish to certain people? We're going to talk about it today.
You know, if you don't feel like sitting through the hour, hopefully hour we get out of this, spoiler alert, the answer is yes, but it'll never happen. I think as fish keepers, I think we would all love for our fish stores to qualify us and determine whether or not we're capable of caring for the entire life of whatever fish that we're buying. But will it ever happen? I can't imagine that it will. And it's unfortunate. And I think as a former fish store owner, the one that failed, I ran up across this all the time. And it is a really difficult spot to be in as a fish store owner when you're selling a fish and you don't really know what it is that you're sending them off to. But at some point, you just kind of have to accept that, and you just have to realize I can't control the entire industry. If I want to sell fish, if I want to stay in business, which I didn't, it's not something that I'm going to be able to do. And I know that sucks to hear, but it's just kind of the way it works. So, but of course we'll go into it in much more depth. I shouldn't have spoiled it, but just felt like it was important to just get that out there right off the bat. I wish we could do this, but I don't know that we can.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that because I had the same situation when I would sell fish at the swaps. Now, granted, I didn't sell a lot of monster fish, but there were fish that required special care. And I guess I just assumed that because I had the descriptions, people were ordering from our website, and on our website it would say, hey, here's the fish, here's the tank size, here's any, is this aggressive? Could be. Here's your minimum tank size. When we'd go to the swaps, I'd have like a little placard that for each fish type that would give basic information, and just assume, hey, you know how to read. This is what's required. If you buy this fish, hopefully you have the proper environment. But I never went through and was like, oh, hey, by the way, let me go ahead and give you a big interview and see if you can keep these fish properly. Because I think the default is really about tank size, right? So how do you even do that as a fish store owner when somebody comes to you and says, yeah, I would like to buy this pacu? I got these comments a lot because recently I did 2 fish store tours. One was in Cincinnati area. The other one was in the Colorado area. And if you want to see some baby monster fish, check out just Primetime Aquatics fish store tours. The 2 that I've done this summer, there was, in both cases, a tank filled, packed, full of Arapaima.
Ooh.
There were pacus. There were iridescent sharks. I mean, pretty much every monster fish, and I mean some very rare stuff. Huge stingrays. I mean, shovel-nosed catfish and all these things, red-tail cats. It was crazy. Gar, you name it. They had it.
Everything that gets big.
Yeah. And the people were like, I don't see how, and they make a valid point in some cases, I don't see how there's a customer base large enough in that region to support having, at that particular time, 50 Arapaima in a tank.
Yep. Yeah, I saw something similar. And I'm going to be honest with you. I do not recall the name of this store. It's actually the store where I bought this Oscar that's right behind my head. And the other one that's in there with him. It was a really cool store. It was kind of one of those, It almost looked like it was something you would see in somebody's basement, but it was a store. There was not really any consistency to it. There was just tanks everywhere, and they were full of a bunch of monster fish. I don't even know that this store sold any fish that would go in a 29-gallon tank. I mean, they were all big ones, and I don't think that store's open anymore. For exactly what you were talking about. It's like, how can you expect there to be enough demand in your area for those big fish? Take the morals out of it. Just how many people are out there looking for those big fish? The answer is not very many when you compare it to your nano fish and your community fish and things like that. So I wonder the same thing. Like, how is there even enough people out there to sustain a business like that? Apparently, in the area that store was, there is not. But I think that when we bring up this issue, like you've already done, we kind of automatically go to big fish, monster fish, arowanas, catfish, Oscar, blah, 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 big cichlids. I don't think it's just about that, though.
Right.
I think that this thing that we're talking about here applies to everything in our hobby. I can't tell you how many 20-gallon tanks I've seen with 75 fish in it. There's tanks on YouTube that are like that have, 50 glowfish in a 10-gallon tank. I mean, there's a lot of madness that's going on out in there. Well, how come the fish store didn't know already that person already had 40 and they probably shouldn't sell them 10 more? You don't. I mean, the fish stores don't know that. You don't know if you're sending 25 fish home with somebody to put in their 20-gallon tank that they just set up yesterday and has not cycled yet and all that kind of stuff. You just don't know, and you have no way of knowing. And I'm going to say it. I'm going to say the bold statement. Most people in this hobby, I don't know this is fact, I'm just using my gut instinct here. Most people in this hobby cannot sustain the fish that they have. I believe that. When we look at hardcore fish keepers like us, that this is their life, this is what we do, we are hobbyists, we can accomplish that. But I think the bulk of this hobby is not people that are like us. They're people that just have tanks. They've got a Super Bowl party coming up on Sunday. They really want people to be impressed with their tank, so they go buy 40 beautiful colored fish to throw in there, and we'll just see what happens. I think that's the bulk of this hobby. I hope I'm wrong, but in my travels in my past of going with different mobile home service jobs, I saw a lot of aquariums that made me scratch my head like, oh, okay, this is how the bulk of this hobby's doing things. It's sad, but I don't know how a fish store can control it. They would never sell any fish.
And keep in mind what John is talking about when he says us, you the viewer, right? You're here nerding out about fish, listening to a podcast. So we're including you, the listener, right now.
Absolutely.
As part of us crazy fish keepers who pretty much get it. Even if you're on the beginner side, you're already plugged in the community. You're already watching the videos. You're already listening. You're already paying attention. That's awesome. But what John is saying, and I believe what you're saying is the general public is not us,
right?
i.e. you, the viewer. Yeah, I walked into a place and I saw, I believe it was a 40-gallon, and it had what looked to be like 5 or 6 very large silver dollars and a couple of ballast sharks that were on the smaller side in a 40. But, they had been there a long time. They were doing okay. They weren't roughed up or anything, but those fish, the growth is being stunted. They're way too active for a tank that size. Like, we know that. But the person who owned that tank didn't think anything of it. He's like, I got some cool fish, and that's just the way it is. I asked, in a very nice way, I asked the store owners in both of those stores I did. I'm like, well, I see you got a lot of these large fish. Who's buying these fish? Because I have the same question everybody else has. Like, how are you able to sell all these fish? One, most of them ship. So you have to look outside their general region, because you're 100% right. If you've got 50 Arapaima in a tank, there might not even be 5 people in Cincinnati or the Denver area that can house an Arapaima. Probably aren't.
Right.
But
Right.
when you start looking nationally, well, you've got a little bit of a larger crew there, a larger customer base. So I asked them like, oh yeah, people who come in here, this is what they specialize in for the most part were monster fish. They've got tanks that are many, many hundreds of gallons, thousands of gallons. They started showing me pictures of some of their customer tanks. And you're like, they're fine. They're fine. I mean, they're selling an Arapaima. It's not like, and they're asking the questions. I mean, I heard them as I'm walking around the stores. Otherwise, I wouldn't have filmed these places. If I hear things that are concerning, the fish are in bad shape, I don't film there. There are way, 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 way more fish stores that I walk into and never film than the ones that you wind up seeing on our channel. And I listen to them, and they're asking the questions. What size tank do you got? This thing's going to get 24 to 30 inches, or, it's going to be a 15-pound fish or whatever, or it's going to be super aggressive and you can't put anything smaller with it than 18-inch fish. So they're asking those questions. They're having those conversations, but they're not the CIA, right?
Right.
What are they supposed to do? Are they supposed to do a home tour? Because a customer could walk in there. When it comes to, our focus right now is on tank size. A customer could say, hey, I want that Arapaima. Well, you do know that this thing can get 10 feet long. Take a look, and they grow pretty fast. So what tank do you have? Well, I've got a 6-foot tank. That's not going to work. That's literally, you got 2 months, 3 months,
Right.
and you're going to have a fish that's too big. But if they say, hey, I've got a 3,000 gallon aquarium, and they just show a picture of a 3,000 gallon aquarium.
Are you going to call them a liar?
Well, maybe. Or they're just going to say, okay, well, you've shown me that you have a tank. We're having a conversation. You seem somewhat kind of halfway knowledgeable about what you're getting yourself into. Here's your fish. They could have pulled that aquarium off the internet, off of any number of, oh, look at that. I found one on Pinterest. And here's a picture of a really cool tank, right? Or I AI'd this thing, because AI is getting so good at this point.
Oh,
you can
yeah.
AI generate a tank, and it can look pretty stinking real. It's not the AI from 2024 anymore, okay? So
Will
it's
Smith
not your
eating
younger
spaghetti.
self's AI.
Yeah.
But I don't know beyond that. I mean, what are they supposed to do with these monster fish other than not sell them? Which there's another argument to be made there. Just, hey, you know what? You got to special order these things, and I don't know.
Special ordering would be even more complicated because you're not able to qualify people, and you're not able to ask them those questions.
Yeah.
I had a similar scenario. It is the one and only fish store I've ever been into where I was like, no, I'm not pulling my camera out on this one. But then I think I went back and I did, but I only showed a couple of things. I've talked about this before. I'm not going to give the name, but I will say that this store was in a rural area. And so, there's not much of a client base to begin with. There was a tank. You've described seeing the same thing. I'm not kidding you. There was at least 24 to 30 Arapaimas in a 150 gallon tank in the back left corner of the store. They were adorable. They were so cute. And I think they were for sale for like $200 a piece or something like that. But it's not just that. I've talked about this before too. They bred Dovai in this store. And Jason, I am not kidding you. If there wasn't 1,000 Dovai fry in this store, there was 2,000. I mean, there's a row of tanks that went across the entire top shelf of the store, and they were all full of Dovai fry. And I'm thinking to myself, who's buying all of those Dovai? I know a lot of people in this industry and in this hobby. I don't know a single person that owns a Dovai.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people in this industry. I know 2 people that could house Arapaimas, and both of them actually do. Predatory Fins and Ohio Fish Rescue.
Yep.
Other than that, I don't know a single person that could house an Arapaima, but they've got 25 of them in a 150 gallon tank back there. And so I ask the same question. Who is buying all of these fish? I mean, reality, when it comes to the Dovai, they're probably like me, and they're like, well, they're breeding. I'm not going to kill the fry. So I got to save them somehow. I don't know what I'm going to do with them, but I got to save them. But the Arapaimas, I don't know. I mean, I can sit here and wag my finger all day long, but at the same time, I told you in last week's episode, if I could get a fish that, like a dream fish kind of a thing, it would be an arapaima. Not the ultimate dream. That's still the Asian arowanas, but I would love to have an arowana, but I would be very particular about the way I would keep that.
Yeah.
So I just don't know what to do about it. And that particular fish store owner, I talked to him. He was an old gentleman, and I said, hey, I'm a YouTuber, and he went like this. For those that are listening to this on audio, I just kind of gave a nice big sigh when the guy heard me say I'm a YouTuber. His shoulders went down and he just kind of slumped. And I was like, what? And he says, well, if you're wanting to make a video in here, I don't know if I'm going to be okay with that, because somebody came in here and did one before and just ate us alive and ripped us apart. And I actually found who that was, and it was a friend of mine. It made me feel bad. But, that was a tricky situation. He didn't even want me filming in there. So it's probably good that I didn't, because there would have been a lot of people really upset if I showed them all those dovai and those arapaimas. But anyway, I wish there was a way to control it for all the fish, not just monster fish, but I don't know that we can.
Yeah. And it's easy to get caught up into that, because even as a home breeder and an importer, I had a couple Midas cichlids that had fry, and they almost all survived. What do you do? Well, at least initially, there was like 700 or 800 of them in a 75-gallon tank. And I get it. You don't want to see them all perish. And I wound up maybe with 100 to 150 that survived, and now I'm moving them into a 10-gallon, and then eventually I had them in a 125. And thankfully, somebody from one of the downstate areas came in one day. It's like, hey, I know you got a bunch of these. I can move them, and bought like 75, basically 3 or 4 inch Midas cichlids.
Nice.
And it was just like, what was I thinking? I had a pair in a 75-gallon, and the pair got along great. The male, I eventually lost the male and then the female years later. But why on earth did I keep a pair of Midas cichlids in a 75-gallon, knowing that the likelihood that they breed is pretty high? And it was. And then what are you going to do with all these fry? And so with that, I mean, again, you've got these fish stores that are, stuff like that happens, like you're saying with the dovai, or they've got a customer that says, Oscars just bred. I've got 100 Oscars. Do you want them? And the fish store's like, I'll take them. I'm not giving you anything for them, and I can't unload 100 of them. But if you give me 30, maybe I can do something with that. But I hear that all the time from people like, oh, they've got these people who are selling these larger fish. They should have to prove that they can keep these fish. And I agree to a certain extent. I do. But I just think, practically speaking, other than educate the potential customer, like, hey, you understand how big this fish is going to get, food requirements, water change requirements, can't be with other fish in some cases. Do you understand that? Yeah, I understand it. Well, what are they supposed to do at that point? Right? Like I said, They're not doing a home tour. Here's your fish. Be on your way. And then, of course, the downside is that customer, sometimes they can house it, but they just get bored of that fish, right? We've talked about that many times, where you got that dovai situation. It's a big, giant New World cichlid. And it's like, well, I've got this thing, and now it's 24 inches long, and it's mean as heck. I can't even put my hand in there to clean the tank because it's attacking me, and those fish will really do damage to you. Well, I don't want this stupid thing anymore. It turned out it's a nightmare. And I got their big fishing net, and they're going in there and bringing it back to a store. Store's like, what am I supposed to do with this 24-inch dovai? There's not a whole lot of people out there that want it. So it gets to be very complicated.
I remember I did one of the dumbest things I've ever done, and I don't know what my problem was, but I did this. I went to a store. It was called Animal Jungle in Virginia Beach, Virginia, and it was one of the most amazing pet stores I've ever been to in my life. Unfortunately, it got shut down. They had like a 125 in there with a pair of Jack Dempsey's. I've always been a lover of Jack Dempsey's. That pair of Jack Dempsey's had a full brood of fry. And it was actually interesting because there was probably 25 adult Jack Dempsey's in there. 23 of them were all up in the right corner, just kind of hiding like, oh, while the other two pair were in the other opposite corner, protecting that massive swarm of fry. And for some reason, like an idiot, I was like, I'd like to buy that pair. And what kind of a arrangement do I need to make with you to get all of the fry with it? And the employee at the store was like, oh no, I'll give you all the fry too. Just take them, no cost. Just, you're helping us with a problem there. So I was like, yay, I can't wait to tell Lisa. She was excited. Everything was great. I ended up bringing home like 300 Jack Dempseys. I mean, Jack Dempseys are great. They're really nice looking and they're really cool. But who wants 300 of them? I don't know what I was thinking. It was really dumb. Probably, I'm not exaggerating. You know as well as I do, Jack Dempseys are super hardy. I mean, you could play baseball with them and they'd still be fine. And we probably had 225 of them survive. And the ones that didn't survive, they just didn't survive the transport from Virginia Beach up to King George. We still were selling online and we were still doing all of that. The pair I wanted as pets for myself. The fry, my plan was to raise them all up and then sell them on our website. We ended up, when we shut the business down, we ended up selling all of the tanks and all of that. And one guy did the same dumb thing that I did, and he bought all of those from me, which was good. I didn't charge him hardly anything. I think I only charged him for shipping for those Jack Dempseys, but they were all at that point. They were all like an inch. When I got them out of that tank in Virginia Beach, they were just little teeny itty bitty babies. They were little teeny things. They had probably all grown to about an inch when I finally got rid of them. I don't know what I was thinking there. But again, did the person at the store know me? No. Did they ask me, what are you taking these home to put them in? What are you going to do with all these fry? No. They were just happy to get rid of them. So it sucks, but I agree with you. I wish that we could get people qualified before they buy them. It's just not practical to do. I mean, there would be no such thing as fish stores anymore if we did that. And it sucks, but what are you going to do?
And it's not just the larger fish. I mean, the bigger problem actually is the everyday tropical fish that most stores carry, right? It is not the oddball arapaima, iridescent shark. Yes, it can be a bigger issue once those fish grow larger, and ask Ohio Fish Rescue or Predatory Fins about that when they're rescuing these fish. But it's also the smaller fish. You have a customer that walks in, and PetSmart especially, I'm thinking of PetSmart, and it's not picking on them, but you look at the variety of fish that they sell. They always sell kind of the beginner stuff, but they always inevitably have those mixed African cichlid tanks. They may have some Jack Dempseys, and
Oscars.
You'll get customers that walk in and they're like, okay, well, I've had the Danios, I had the Glow Light Tetras, I bought some Harlequin Rasboras last time. Hey, look at all those super colorful fish over there that are $5 a piece, and they're blue and they're yellow and they're orange, and I want those. You may get someone that says, okay, what size? That's always a default. What size tank do you have? Well, I've got a 55 gallon. Cool, you're good. And you are, based on that tank size. If they're doing their job, they're also asking you, what fish do you have in that tank already? Oh, I've got the Danio. Okay, this isn't going to work, right? But again, you could have a customer that is so uneducated that they don't really even know the fish they have. Oh, I got a bunch of fish that are like this big, and they've been there a while, and I don't have that many left, and I've got this. And they could say they've got a 55-gallon tank and legitimately think that, and really they've got a 29. I mean, it's for people watching this, you'd be like, how can somebody confuse a 55-gallon with a 29? Trust me. Mm-hmm. You talk to people who are not like all of us watching this. You guys are the cool ones, right? You're the best. We are the number one podcast in all of alternative universes because you are the number one community of all alternative universes. So congratulations there. But you get people who are like, oh, I've got a 55-gallon. Well, really? What? So, oh yeah, it's on my dresser. It's like about this big. And you're like, what you're describing is a 20 or a 29. It's not a 55-gallon. Or how big is it? How long? Oh, it's long, man. It's got to be like 4 feet long. And then they dig up a picture like, dude, that's a 29. That's not 4 feet long. It's 30 inches, So again, it's not just the big fish. It's the smaller ones and the mixes and the care requirements too.
And can you imagine? I understand that this is going to be a controversial question here, but I'm not talking about any particular type of person or anything like that. I'm just talking about the general public. Can you imagine in 2025 the reaction that you would get from a consumer when you tell them, no, I'm not going to sell that to you? Now, let's be honest. Most people would look at that and be like, okay, but you'd only have to have that one that all of a sudden is starting to post on social media. They denied me and it's because of this or it's because of that. Whatever the circumstances are, you are skating on some real thin ice if you start telling people, you can't buy things here. I don't want to be in that position. I mean, and that, you can get in some real serious trouble there. So it's probably the most difficult place or position to be in. For some reason, it's not a difficult position when it comes to dogs, cats, birds, things like that. But when it comes to fish, look at this idiot posing behind me. When it comes to fish, it's like, just let them go. Case in point, that fish right there, probably the most abused fish. Not mine, but that type of fish, probably the most. How many of those do you think are in 20-gallon tanks as we speak?
Oh,
Millions?
absolutely. Yeah,
So,
a bunch.
I mean, it's one of those things where it's too impossible, as weird as that sounds. I've been on the other side of it and I know how difficult it is. I've been there when you have customers coming in every single week to buy fish, and you know why that's happening, because the fish they bought last week died.
Yeah.
And so all they're doing is taking fish home every week and killing them. Am I supposed to say, hey, I'm not gonna sell you fish anymore? I mean, how it happened to me, but how quickly would your average fish store go out of business if you did that? I'm glad I'm not in that position anymore. I mean, that's a rough one.
Yeah, and the other thing too to consider, like I felt like I was pretty lucky when I was selling at the swaps, because let's face it, again, if you're going to a fish swap,
That's hardcore.
there is a level of fish knowledge there usually that exists at those fish swaps that you don't see, like for you when you had a storefront where people are just wandering in and they might be a little bit newer. Most people, the fish swaps are not newer, and if they are, they're rapidly progressing and they're not afraid necessarily to ask questions. Or, hey, I just read this on your little thing here, your little picture. I've got this tank with this fish. Is this going to be okay? Yeah, there are lots and lots of conversations like that happen. But it's tough because you also have to consider you have a strong personality. You're not afraid to be like, hey, let's ask some questions. Let's have a conversation. And you certainly have it in you to say, hey, no, this is not a good fit. I'm not doing this. But think about how many younger people who love animals are just getting into the hobby. They decide, hey, you know what? I really want to work at PetSmart or Petco or a local fish store. And they're 16, 17, 18 years old. And you've got an adult that comes in and says, I want this. And then even though they're younger, a teenager maybe, and they do know, let's just say they do know their stuff. It's I think a lot of us have forgotten when you are that age and you're talking to somebody older,
Yep.
especially if they're a parental sort of figure, to tell them, no, that's
Yep.
just not going to happen. You're not going to do that. And the older person they're not having it, man. It's not going to happen. And so you can provide all the knowledge. You can provide, hey, you know what, this fish that you're looking at an angelfish. That's awesome. What size tank do you have? I've got a 20-gallon. Okay, well, I know this fish is a little bitty guy right now and it's cute. And for right now, it would work, but you're going to want like a 55-gallon for this fish because it's going to live, if you're doing everything right, it could live 8 to 10 years and it's going to get pretty big. And that 20 gallons not going to be sufficient. Well, yeah, I know that. I'll deal with that. We're planning on getting a bigger tank in a couple months anyway.
Mm-hmm.
That conversation's over at that point,
Yep.
right? You're not saying, nobody, even people with a stronger personality, they're not saying, I'm sorry, come back to me when you've got the 55 gallon. Nobody's saying that
Nope.
because, and the other thing to consider is we've talked in the past about these fish stores. So many of them are struggling, right? It's if you are looking to get into a career that is going to provide you a lot of financial flexibility and the ability to go on vacation and have just this wonderful, great life and spend lots of family time together. do not get into the fish selling business, because you're not doing any of that, especially retail. You got a fish store, most likely you're going to be there 5 to 7 days a week. Someone calls in, you're there. You're not getting rich, right? You
Right.
can sustain yourself for sure, but you're going to be, so now you're telling me you're going to turn away customers who are telling you somewhat right answers. And just because you don't get a good gut feeling, you're not turning away customers every day that we're going to come in there and buy fish. Because guess what they're not doing the next time they need fish? They're not showing up at your store again because they're mad at you for what you did to them the last time when they were there. So you've not just lost that one sale, you've probably lost that very valuable customer for probably ever.
Not to mention, they're going to tell all of their friends, yeah, they don't sell fit. They're mean. They're horrible. Um, you mentioned a word. I didn't understand the word. It started with like what was that word you used? Vacation. What is
Oh
that
yeah,
word?
yeah, yeah. Those things, vacations. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
What is that? Can you define that for me? I've never
Yeah,
heard that
that's a
word
thing
before.
where you don't go to work for a defined period of time, and instead you go to a beach or a mountain or like a forest and you have fun with your family or spouses or friends. And then you come back and you go back to work, but then you have twice as much to do as you did before you left. And you actually had twice as much to do before you left because you're trying to catch up on all the things you were going to miss when you left. And then you come back and you've got twice as much to do because you missed a bunch of stuff. But anyway, at least for that week, you're not at the actual workplace. So that's called a vacation, or as some say, vacation. So yeah,
This
yeah,
sounds like a fascinating concept.
it
I'm going to
is.
have to look into. I'm going to give that a Google a little later on today.
Yeah, you should probably
Uh,
chat GPT that. It can teach you all about those things.
I am going to look into that for sure. I've never heard of that thing you talk about. You know, uh, I have an interesting story that I want to share with you. I alluded to it earlier, um, and it kind of ties in to this because it's about a fish store owner. I'm not going to put any fish store on blast. If I'm being 100% brutally honest with you, I don't even know the name of the fish store. This is a story I was told by another person. Um, but the reason why I'm bringing it up is because as we're talking here, we're talking about fish stores and them having knowledge about the fish that they're selling and inquiring as to whether or not the customer is capable of housing those fish. In my experience at the big box pet stores, I've heard this so many times. I've heard the employees say, you know, these get big, right? Yeah, I know they get big. Okay. And then they just keep bagging them up. It's like they're not really, and that I don't mean to single out big box stores. I mean, you know, they all do it, but everybody's got to make a living. But we assume, particularly when we're talking about the mom and pop fish stores, that has always been, for as long as you and I have kept fish, we've always considered that is our holy grail for getting good information. If you really need to know how to do something, you go talk to the old guy behind the counter at the fish store. He's done it. He knows. He's going to tell you, or she. And it's always been the number one resource for information. But I heard a story that blew my mind and made me realize, oh, maybe that's not really a thing. The story goes like this. I was talking to a friend of mine that owns a fish business. That's all I'm going to say. It was not our mutual friend. You met him, Mark from Aquariums Unlimited. I'm not talking about a fish store owner here. I'm actually talking about a fish selling business uh, that I'm friends with. Was talking to one of his customers, and the customer couldn't understand, didn't want to buy fish from him anymore because she couldn't understand why all of the fish that she was buying from him were dying. She would get them in these big shipments of fish and they would all die, and she couldn't figure it out. Obviously, my friend was concerned about that, and so he was like, well, let's figure it out. Let's get to the bottom of this. If I'm selling you bad fish, I want the opportunity to make up for this. You know, I'm not going to just let that stand. Let's figure out why this is happening. And she said, well, it doesn't make any sense to me because I do everything there. It couldn't possibly be a better way for me to do what I'm doing to make sure that everything is perfect. What I do is I get a batch of fish in from you. They either all die off or I sell them. And then once that tank is empty, I completely dismantle that tank and sterilize the entire thing. Then, just before, I'm telling you the truth, Jason, this is word for word how he told me this. Then, just before I get the next shipment of fish in, I fill them all back up again, set them all up again, and put the new shipments of fish in those. This is a fish store that does this. So, how qualified is that person? Probably about the same level of qualifications I had when I started my fish store. But the point that I'm trying to make is, you don't even know how much knowledge the store owner has and if they're going to be able to qualify people to make sure they're doing the right thing. I don't know.
Yeah. And that's why we've always said, do your homework before you go to a fish store. You shouldn't. It would be nice to be able to get additional information about the fish you're interested in from the people who work at these places. But information is a commodity now. It's your fault, 100%.
That's true.
When you walk into a store and you're buying fish and you take them home and you don't know how to care for them, it's 100% on the customer, always. Because you've got the internet now. Everybody's got access to the internet. Even if you don't have a smartphone or a computer, you can go to the library and use their internet for free, look up all the things you want to look up, and then you go to the fish store and don't impulse buy stuff that you don't know about, right? And that solves a lot of problems. But and I guess that's the other aspect of this. It doesn't need to be up to the fish store to be like, it shouldn't be 100%. Oh, you know what? Let me teach you all about this fish you're supposed to buy, that you want to buy. People should, just like they would do if they were, hopefully they're buying a car or something like that, or a house. You're like, oh, let me research the neighborhood. Let me research the school district. Let me research this car's quality history and go on Consumer Reports or something. When you walk in and you're buying fish, you should know, okay, what size are they going to get to when they're full grown? What do they eat? What are the temperatures, water parameters, tank size that I need, compatibility with other fish? There is no excuse to not have that information for the overwhelming majority of fish that are available in the fish keeping hobby today. It's out there. It's one click away.
You know what you just did?
What I do?
You just completely changed my opinion about this topic entirely. You did. Because what you're saying is so true. In 2025, there is absolutely no excuse for somebody to go into a transaction like buying a fish and not be prepared. If you're going to buy a new tool, you're going to go watch 50 YouTube videos about that particular tool. If you're going to buy a new truck, you're going to go watch reviews from Doug DeMuro about that truck. You're going to do all of that research. You should be doing the same thing about the fish that you're buying, and it should absolutely not be up to the fish store. You should go in there knowing exactly what you're doing. And you know what? The fish stores also should kind of expect that. I don't think it's unreasonable to think that the fish store, if somebody walks in and says, that's what I want, I feel like, I don't own a fish store, but if I did, I feel like I would be looking at it and saying, you know what, that's somebody that knows what they're talking about. They've done their research. They came in, we have what they want, and they're going to buy. Okay, I feel comfortable doing that. That's the way in 2025. That's the way it should be. When I started my store in 2013, this was still a new thing. I was offended when a customer would be in my store thumbing through their phone. I don't even know how many smartphones there were then, but that used to really bother me because I'd be like, you're here, just ask me. Why are you doing that? It was still kind of a new concept. But you're right. Now, 2025, people need to be prepared. You're going to be prepared if you make the decision of what kind of dog you want to buy. You're not going to go to a dog store, if there is such a thing, and say,
honey, I'll be right back. I'm going to go over to the dog store and get me a new dog.
I don't know if that's a thing, but
what's this little yappy one? I'll take one of that one. Give me one of the big ones too. The big one's not going to eat the little one, is it? No, it's fine. All right, give me a big one and a little one. That big one probably shut this yappy one up, right?
If a store like that exists, I would love to. That'd be heaven to go to a store like that, but where they just have all the dogs.
Yeah.
But the point is, you're going to do all the research before you buy a dog. You might think Rottweilers are the coolest thing in the world, but then you do a little research and you realize, like an Arapaima, you're not set up to take care of that. There's absolutely no excuse for a customer to go into the store uneducated. You, my friend, have changed my outlook on this entirely. I think it is up to the customer. I don't know if you meant to do that, but you did.
I was just speaking from the heart, man. I deep down in my heart.
Well,
However,
it shows how smart you are.
it's still, I mean, it's still just good business practices and just, hey, here's the basics. You want this Arapaima, you know, it's going to get 10 to 12 feet. You know, it's going to be like a many 100-pound fish or multiple 100-pound fish. You know, you're going to need at least a 20-foot tank, right? You've got all that? Yeah. Here you go. You've obviously done the research. You know, you said you know all that stuff. You understand. There you go. The conversation we've had in the past is whether or not the fish should even be sold. Somewhere we did a podcast about that. And that's a different conversation, right? In terms of whether or not the Arapaima, the red tail catfish, the pacu, the iridescent shark, should they even be in the hobby? That's a completely separate conversation. And one that we, like I said, we've done it before. Search Tank Talk podcast, should these fish be sold? That podcast will come up. We talked about it for an hour. And I think we made some pretty good arguments there in terms of pros and cons of that. But yeah, I just, man, in terms of fish store owners can only do so much. Right. Here's the requirements. Do you understand them? Yes, I do. Here's your fish.
Well, and in the extremes, like you just mentioned, Arapaima. I mean, Arapaima is the fish that comes up in every monster fish conversation. I mean, it is the gold standard for the fish that gets way too big for this hobby. In the extremes, like if you're a fish store selling red-tailed cats and tiger shovel nose and all of that, doveye, then yeah, maybe even though we live in an age where everybody's walking around with a computer in their pocket, you probably still should qualify those people. But it alleviates some of the stress for me when it comes to all of the other fish. You know, we've talked about it, even the community fish. Do you know if they're going to be taking them home and putting them in the right size, in the right environment? People should know. They should be prepared for that. But there is one more scenario, and it's one that was very rare in my store, but it did happen to me, and it's very common in my friend Mark's store. That is the customer that does walk in completely green to this. I was going to say blind, but that would have been inappropriate to say that, but they're completely green. They have no idea. I had a customer come in, actually turned out to be a very good friend of mine. He became a good friend of mine. He came into my store one night, like 10 minutes before we closed, and he stopped in because he lived in the neighborhood and he drove by every day, and he just always wondered what was inside this store. No idea what it was that we were doing, which means we were doing a bad job. But he walked in and he was like, "Oh, this is cool. This is neat." And he's walking around with his wife and his daughter, and he's like, "This is really, really cool." And he made the decision right then and there, I'm buying a fish tank. And if we had one, we didn't sell tanks, but if we had one at the time, he would have wanted to buy everything right there on the spot. Tank, filters, fish, everything. I had to send him away to buy the tank somewhere else and then come back, which he did. And like I said, he turned out, him and his wife became very good friends of Lisa and I. That's the kind of person that's just like curious. Oh, let me check this out.
Sure.
Even in
Fish
2025.
curious?
Yeah. Even in 2025, we probably still, fish store owners should still qualify them and get them up to speed. And every single fish store owner I've ever known, when somebody like that walks in, they go, "Oh," because they know I'm going to spend the next hour and a half explaining all of this to them. And I would imagine in 2025, that's probably, dare I say, pretty annoying, because it's like, you should know all this stuff before you come into a store like this.
And they're going to spend that hour and a half with that customer and probably have about a 25% chance that the customer actually buys anything. So
that's true.
75% of the time, it's completely a waste of time, unfortunately. But you don't know that going into it. And you try to put your best foot forward and hope for the that you've got somebody into the hobby. But a lot of times I've seen that a lot. Just, you wander around fish stores and you'll see what do they say in business? It's the same thing in education. 20% of your customers or students will take up 80% of your time.
Mm-hmm.
Fortunately for that 20%, a lot of them don't make it. And so either they don't make it through a course or they don't actually become a customer. And so, oh, that's tough. And you know it going in. It's like, well, are you going to be one of the ones that actually gets converted to a customer, or are you just going to be another person that walks out the door and is like, I don't feel like doing that. Thanks for the hour and a half of your time. I know you had a bunch of other customers, but I'll see you later. Actually, never again.
Yep.
So,
And that is a tight spot. And, working in retail can make you very cynical to that kind of stuff. Like you just assumed like, oh, here we go again. You have to do it because, you want to try to earn that customer. And if you do earn that customer, you want to make sure that they're going to do it the right way. But it's like, you just never know. And it's a lot like car sales. Most of them are going to walk out and not do anything. And you know what? In a lot of those cases, that's the right thing for them to do because they're not prepared for it. They're not willing to put the time into it. So, you've, as much as it hurts to waste all that time, you've kind of done a service to the fish and the hobby, but that becomes a hard pill to swallow. Like on a Saturday afternoon when there's 16 people walking around the store and you got somebody asking every single question, that can be tricky. And we're still, like I said, we're talking, for me, it was 2013 through 15. The internet was definitely here. Amazon was becoming a thing before they became the devil. And, all of this was happening, but it was at nowhere near the level that it is now. Now I would imagine people would just be thinking, you can learn this stuff on YouTube in the car on your way home. Like, why you got to take up all of my time? I got 16 customers walking around.
yeah.
Again, maybe that's why I'm not in business anymore. I don't have this fish store anymore, maybe. But
Yeah.
I mean, I never told any customers anything like that. But I was actually really excited to work with new people. But there was times where you would have that customer that would be just pounding you with the questions while there's 12 people and you see them standing there like,
Come on, dude.
are we going to give me these fish at any point? And that can become pretty stressful. It was just Lisa and I. So,
Right.
that can be tricky. But anyway, I didn't mean to go on that venting rant there. In a perfect world, everybody that bought a fish would be prepared to house that fish safely for the rest of its life. But unfortunately, we don't live in that world, and it's impossible to make sure that happens. It sucks, but it's the world we live in. I wish it was different, but
The worst part about it is I could see it. I could see a scenario, because you know how the government is, where you have government officials, politicians that force the issue, that now make it a mandatory thing that fish stores, I don't know, interview their customers in some way, shape, or form to make sure that they can house not just fish. I could see this for everything: cats, dogs, snakes, geckos. And if they ever did that, it would be an absolute disaster, because you would just wind up closing most stores because they don't have the time for this. They don't have a way to verify any of this stuff. And somehow, I just hope it never gets to that. We talk about it periodically, how you've got politicians who want to make lists of things you can keep and you can't keep. And I could just see this being a thing. Well, the problem is these stores, they don't make sure that the people can care for them. And somehow, some way, it's their responsibility. It's like, no, it's always the self, right? Take some responsibility for yourself.
And people lie. I mean, if they did institute something like that, how are they going to have people prove what they're saying? And everybody would just lie. I've done it. I'm going to be brutally honest with you. Early in my fish keeping days, I had this is so bad, but I've said it so many times. I had an Oscar in a 29-gallon tank. I still regret it. I'm a horrible person. I saw a Frontosa at a store, and I wanted to buy that. To the store's credit, they asked me, what are you going to be taking that home and putting it in? I said, I'm going to be putting it in a 29-gallon tank. What's in the tank already? Oscars. That's not really a good idea. And I told the lady, oh no, it's fine, because I've got a whole bunch of tanks. And if it doesn't work out, I can move that. And she said, well, it doesn't stay in the same water. That's when people still believed that.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, it's no big deal. I can do this and I'll make it work in another. Lying through my teeth, that 29, the 229s was all I had. It was just, I was not going to allow this lady who was doing the right thing to tell me that I couldn't buy this fish. I lied, and I went home with that fish. But I was like 20, so don't give me too much of a hard time. And we were, at least I was, probably not you. I was really dumb back then because we didn't have these with all the information on it. So, yeah, I did that. And I don't think it's unusual. I think a lot of people would be doing that. Say whatever it is you need to say to bring home what it is that you want to bring home. It sucks.
Yep. Yeah, especially if you've got those monster fish and you're in your 20s, you want to show off to all your buddies, like, look what I got in that 55 gallon, man. That thing's gonna get to be like 12 feet long. What are you gonna do when I get that big? Man, I don't know. I just want to see how bait will get in that tank. I'll figure it out.
I'm not gonna lie to you. I lived in a townhouse at that time, and I had a friend ask me that about my arowana. This is so embarrassing, and I promise you, lightning strike me dead if I'm lying to you. There was a huge pond out in front of our townhouse complex. Massive. I don't know the difference between a pond and a lake. It might have been a lake. I don't know. And I was like, well, if push comes to shove, I can always put it in that. I never did that. My dog used to love swimming in that pond, but I never put a fish in there. I promise I never did. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I was really dumb when I was that age.
Lots of people are. Lots of people are. I wasn't dumb in that way. I was dumb with motorcycles. So, everybody has the ways that they express their stupidity when they're dudes in their early 20s. We all just express it in a different way. So, that's okay.
We got to learn the hard way.
Yeah. I don't really have much else in terms of should the fish stores grill people, interview people. I'd love to hear from everybody else what your thoughts are. Maybe there's a way or a system we haven't thought about yet, but I don't have any more.
Yeah, I think in a perfect world, we would all love to see that happen, but I think we all also know it never will. I don't mean to be doom and gloom, but I just don't think that's going to be something that's ever going to happen.
Yeah. And if you are somebody who works in the fish industry, at a fish store owner, employee, love to hear from you. What do you do? What is your process for making sure, to the best of your ability, that fish are going to a good home? So leave that in the comments section below. But hey, you know what? As always, thank you for being here. Really appreciate you hanging out with us this week. And we're going to be back same time, same place next week. Hope to see you there. Have a great week, everyone.